Hey guys, thanks for joining us here again on the Good Company podcast. We got a little bit of a switch up for you today. New host for today's episode is going to be our managing partner, Christian Pepe. He's going to be interviewing a group of realtors on why they got in the business, why they do what they do, how they help their borrowers and their clients in special ways, how they market. Just some really good realtor commentary on what's going on right now. So please like, subscribe, take a look at the video, enjoy it, and yeah.
Have a great day.
That's it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Good Company podcast. I'd like to send a big thank you to Ryan and Jack for allowing us to essentially do a podcast takeover here. This event is normally sponsored by First Equity. Today, PRMG is basically the sponsor. This is Christian Pepe, branch manager of PRMG in the Girt location. And we have a really exciting show for you today. Everything we do here is real estate related. Today, we're focusing on what we've put together here is some of the top real estate agents in the central New Jersey market, specifically in Ocean and Monmouth County. For those of you out of state, Ocean and Monmouth County are pretty much centrally located in New Jersey. Encompasses the Jersey Shore, which encompasses a lot of high-end second homes. I'd also consider us to be a suburb, essentially, to Manhattan, as a lot of areas are basically within an hour drive of the city. And Monmouth and Ocean County are probably two of the most densely populated counties in New Jersey. So we have with us, like I said, really excited to have 4 top agents, and I'm going to let them all introduce themselves in a second. We're basically, the premise of today's show is to really try to get in the mindset of top agents, some of the things, the do's and don'ts, what makes them successful as agents for anybody who's thinking about getting into the real estate game as an agent. But even furthermore than just being an agent, I view anything real estate related as kind of being an entrepreneur and being, self-employed, so to speak. And I think tips can be learned here, even if you're a real estate investor, if you're in any type of sales or entrepreneurial platform. I think there's a lot of things that you'll learn here, how to be a self-starter, how to be self-motivated, how to be able to be a critical thinker and think on the fly. So, and then also, we're going to kind of go over and talk a little bit about the market. And, obviously, most people know that this is a pretty interesting market to be in. Things are pretty volatile. Things are constantly changing, and, just get some insight from them as people who are, basically boots on the ground, if you will, and, have them give their insight of where they think the market is now and where things are going. So again, thank you to the Good Company podcast for allowing us to do this. And so going to kind of just maybe let's start by just going around the room. I'll start over to my left with Dan and have you kind of just introduce yourself, tell quickly about you, and we'll kind of work around the room.
My name is Dan Casais. I am with RE/MAX Realty 9 in Howell, New Jersey, and I do mostly residential real estate. I specialize in Monmouth, Ocean counties, and I also do some work up in Hudson County, the Bayonne, Jersey City area.
Okay. And then next to Dan is Meghan.
My name is Meghan Anderson. I'm also with RE/MAX Realty 9 in Howell, New Jersey. I specialize in Monmouth and Ocean County in residential real estate.
Great. And then over to my right.
I'm David Najdzinowicz with RE/MAX Bay Point in Point Pleasant, and again specialize in residential, mostly at the Jersey Shore.
And I'm Brad Gardner with Keller Williams West Monmouth, located in Marlborough, New Jersey. Same thing as these guys. We're all kind of residential. I really take a liking to working with real estate investors. Kind of simpler transactions sometimes, but for the most part, I think we all deal in the same markets with the same clients.
Cool. So yeah, so just to kind of get into it, I always like to just kind of start just, in any profession, what kind of, was your initial interest that got you attracted to being in real estate, and why you chose this as a profession? So I could start on either end. Dan,
Yeah,
want to take us out?
For me, it was a passion right off the bat. I'm a numbers guy. I had a book of business in finance, and I specialized in tax-free municipal bonds. And I was busy from 9 o'clock till 10 or 10:30, and then I'd go out and I'd go to the gym. I'd cook, and then I'd get back to my desk by 3, wrap it up by 4:30, 5 o'clock. And I found that there was this space. And I always wanted to venture into real estate. Started in 2014, really slow. Not a lot of business was rolling in right off the bat, but gained some momentum, thank goodness. And for me, it's just a whole entire transaction. Just taking someone raw. Hey, I'm looking for a house. I need to get qualified. Where do I go from here? And just directing them. Sending them off to a mortgage person to get pre-qualified, so we know exactly where we need to be with regards to monthly payments and how much we're looking for in a house. And I mean, for me, it's just the whole passion of going from point A to point Z and enjoying every moment the whole entire way through. It's exciting.
Awesome. Megan?
I was always obsessed with houses. I used to watch the market, and I decided when my son was grown to take on a new career. So I got into the business. I came running in and haven't stopped since, and I'm very blessed.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It started out with my dad when I was a kid. He was really into real estate, and he actually has a real estate license for a little bit, but he always liked looking at homes. And even when we're on vacation, he would take us looking at neighborhoods in Florida and stuff like that. And I kind of was drawn to that, I guess. Not going on vacation and looking at homes, but just kind of the real estate part of it. So that started me interested in it. And I worked on Wall Street as an options specialist when I first came out of college. I got my real estate license because I wanted to invest in real estate, and I thought, what's a better way to invest in real estate than get your license, which really didn't turn out to be the case. But so that's the reason I got my license. And then I was actually working in the World Trade Center after September 11th. It kind of pushed me towards more real estate to make that decision easier to move to real estate. So after that, I kind of just went in full force, and I've been doing it since.
Awesome.
I'm a little bit different. So I started, I'm a full-time teacher as well. And I started selling houses 8 years ago with a guy who worked in my building who sold 30 and 40 houses a year and said he needed help. And I always found that, like, I'm a worker, so I would come home at 2:30 and be like, well, what am I doing? Like, there's got to be something else for me to do here. And for me, it just took off for me doing appraisals and home inspections and things like that. And it went from 3 deals a year to 40 myself. And now, like, I still teach. I still manage teaching and selling houses. But, yeah, I mean, he asked for help, and I kind of started, and that was it. I haven't really looked back since.
Yeah, I mean, that's a nice way to get started in it, right? Because, like, the biggest thing, and me being in the mortgage business, yeah. I mean, let's talk about the elephant in the room is that, our business it's all commission, right? I mean, it's just like you got to be out there kind of hustling. So the fact that you're able to kind of segue into that is good, but then I also feel like some people could get complacent with that too, right? You might only do a couple deals a year because you just, but to be able to balance that is interesting.
I think the thing that was like kind of tough at first was like from my stance, like I tell all clients up front, listen, just so you know, I do teach, I do X amount of business because I don't want them to think I'm a part-timer. But from the same standpoint, like I always thought like, man, what happens if people need to go see houses on a Tuesday at noon? And the reality is that most people don't go see houses on a Tuesday at noon. Like, they're fine with 3, 4, 5 o'clock at night. And honestly, like, my wife is super supportive of what I do, so she's very at home with the kids, and like it works for us. It does.
Yeah, but it is a balancing. I mean, I know you all personally, and we all have kids, right? And you all have things going on. So, like, was that part of what attracted you to the business too? Is like the flexibility of being able to to kind of have that. But like Dan, I mean, I know like you have young kids like me where soccer games and sports and all kinds of stuff. You got to kind of figure that piece out.
That's why I have that notebook in front of me. So if somebody calls me and says, Dan, I need to see houses tomorrow, I'm like, hold on. rip out the
Gotta
book
break it
and
out,
make
yeah.
sure that I'm like laser focused on what I'm doing here. But it is a balancing act with the children, and it is a blessing because I get to segregate some time for my children, and make sure I'm present for them when it comes to soccer games and events. So this business has allowed me to be present in their lives.
No, that's awesome. No, that's good stuff.
Yeah.
Toughest part. What would you guys? Somebody wants to take lead on that. What would you say the toughest part of being a realtor is?
Trying to separate.
Okay, I was gonna go along those lines. I'm on the phone all the time, and I feel like part of my problem, like you just said, trying to separate is like I won't put it down. Like if you call me at 9, it's terrible to say, and I shouldn't admit this. I'm gonna answer.
Same.
Yeah.
Like, and part of me is like, yes, it's a good thing because it'll bring me business. But on the same hand, like, I have a wife and kids at home too, and like you try to separate. I even said to you yesterday, I was at the Mets game with my kids, just my 2 older ones, and I'm on the train texting him, I need a pre-approval for this and I need that, and it's like I couldn't put the phone down for 2 hours,
Right.
So that's my biggest issue.
I think, I guess the waves of it and the cycles. And I think over the years, over my career, I've gotten used to it. But I know early on, I used to, you'd have weeks where you were like overwhelmed with how much stuff you have to do and how many people are calling you, how many deals you're trying to put together. And then you might have 2 weeks where nothing's going on. You're like, you get freaked out and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And then you try and hustle your business and all of a sudden it's just like keeps going up and down. I think like now I'm kind of more used to it. So now I get to enjoy the times where I'm like, I have a down week and I'm not taking 5 buyers out and I can kind of relax a little bit. But I think it takes a long time to get used to that up and down kind of cycle of it.
Yeah, for sure, no doubt. Anything
I
you
like
wanna
the craziness of it. I do. I'm obsessed with working. I'm addicted to my phone. So it is what it is.
Yeah, listen, I mean that's. I mean, you have to have that mentality, and like you already, I pick up from all of you that you have that self-starter mindset. Like when you're saying, like, to me, if you're in sales and you do you are slow, and I've talked to all you about it. It's like all of a sudden that panic button goes in, and you're like, all right, where is my next meal coming from? And I think there's good parts of that. I mean, it could be stressful, but if you could work through it. And what I always love, and I equate the mortgage business to be kind of similar, is that like you are, for better or worse, you're in control of your own destiny, right? You know what I mean? And I do think a lot of times there's a direct correlation, right, between the harder you work and hopefully the more money that you make.
Sure.
So.
It's a chaos.
Yeah.
You wind up fielding phone calls, answering texts, and to go back to you picking up a phone at 9 o'clock at night, that's my favorite type of agent, because the difference between you and the other guy that doesn't pick up his phone calls, he's going to forget about you in the morning.
Oh, for sure.
You're going to leave a message, you're going to text, and then come 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning, if you don't follow up with that person that doesn't pick up the phone, you're not going to be successful.
Correct.
So you got to stay in their face, and that's why I like working with agents like you. You pick up, you get me my answer, I go back, I relay info. But it is a chaotic life, and I would, if I can go back, say these are my working hours. I shut it off at 7 o'clock, and then it's family time, unless I segregate time for my children and say, look, we're hanging out from 6 o'clock till 9 o'clock, and then I'll answer some phone calls and text. I think you have to set boundaries in this industry.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I've done that, where like I've had people, an agent will Saturday afternoon, you get that call, hey, I need to get this person pre-approved. And it happens, but sometimes you're just like, I question though, like, do people think like you're like, do they think that as a mortgage person that, I have on the the weekend loan officer that I'm like sitting in an office from 9 to 5. So sometimes honestly I've taken video where I've said, hey, listen, more than happy to help you. I'm sending over my link to complete the application. I'm here with my kids, just want to kind of let you know that and not in a condescending way or whatever, but letting people know that you're real people, that you actually have a life, and that you're not
But
just
I'm sure they appreciate that.
Yeah, well, you hope so. You hope so. But like in my business, my fear is like, that you're getting the call because they're big bank, the big box bank loan officer that is at, a big, institution that does work 9 to 5 and isn't available on the weekend, that you're not just getting used for, the pre-approval, just like, you guys might get used to, go show a home, because somebody else isn't available, and then you show them one time and then they're leaving you. But that's one of the toughest things too, right? Is the loyalty factor with
Well, I
people.
think part of the fear too is that like I don't want to not. There's a million of us. Like, if I don't answer the phone, someone
Somebody
else
else
will.
will.
And like from my standpoint, like if I tell you no, like going back to what you just said about like your calendar or soccer game, I always ask, like, if I have a conflict, do you have to go at this time, or can we do something else? Because if you say you don't, if you say yes, I have to, I'm gonna call someone that I know will. Hey, I'll send my assistant with you, but at the end of the day, you're still my client. You know, so like I'm not. I don't ever want to turn down business, but you know, I think that there's a million people out there that aren't afraid to do that, and I think that might be what separates 5 of us from other people.
Yeah.
Kind of like they're saying is it's pretty interesting. Is like a lot of stuff is the general public doesn't see what goes on with real estate agents and behind the scenes. And like Dan said, is like when you're doing a deal or putting an offer, I'm like, it really, having a good agent represent you is really important, not just because they know what they're doing and they can help you through it, everything, but other agents, it's kind of like, you know, it's a big community, but it's a community, and you get to know who does a good deal and who's good to work with. And you know, like if I know I'm putting in an offer to one of Dan's listings, I know Dan's going to get back to me and be good to work with, and we're going to communicate and everything. Compared to, and a lot of the general public doesn't realize that. They kind of just think like it just happens, but there's a lot of steps in between there. And if someone has an agent who isn't available or doesn't return calls, or I just had one where I was trying to talk to them about something very important, and I get to their voicemail, and their voicemail's full, and for the whole afternoon, and you know, texting doesn't work. So, so a lot of people don't realize how important it is to have an agent who's really on top of it and staying on top of things.
Well, especially in this market, right? I mean, like things are just happening lightning fast. And it's like, you know, I mean, I know things are starting to maybe slow up a little bit, but for the past 6-12 months, I mean, it's been, I mean, if you're not getting your offer in right away or, you know, whatever, I mean, it's just, things happen so quick. So you have to be able to be ready to execute. What do each of you think has made you, if there's one thing that's made you the most successful, you know, an agent? I mean, you guys are all, like I said, top producing people. You know, what do you think has made you the most successful?
I think consistency, picking up that phone call, returning a text message, making yourself available, and also, you know, going back to what Dave said, when you have a deal with somebody, right? And our colleague Caitlin isn't here right now, but I had a deal with her, and I've gone back to her a few times. That relationship that you establish with that person, I get excited to see their name again, to go back and be like, oh my gosh, I know this person. Let me find out how we can make this work, what their seller's terms, what they're looking for. And I think that's huge for me. So answering your phone call, being available, and having that relationship, and nurturing it, and going back and saying, hey, I'd love to work with you again. What's it going to take? What do we have to do to get my clients in the front of the line? It has to be a passion. If you're not passionate about it, you're not going to go very far, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well said. I agree. Passion, absolutely. But also finding a common ground with these people. They want to know that you're human, not just a robot. So I feel that I really bond with them. And then we go from client, realtor, to become friends by the end. So sometimes at closing table, I feel like I'm getting a divorce. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm never going to see them again.
It is sad.
For me,
it really is.
I always try to, I'm overly honest, like to a fault with people. Like, I always tell people, like, I'm not a salesman. I'm not here to sell you on buying a house. Like, if we walk in a place and I think this house stinks, I'm going to say, let's go. Like, this is a waste of my time and yours. I would never in a million years try to convince you to buy this. Like, this is stupid. You're going to like what you're going to like, and I'm going to do my job, which is to get you the best deal I can and get you the house. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to sell you on quartz countertops. Like, this is...
You know, I think key there, and what you're touching on is, I think that your honesty coming through to the client and saying, look, I don't like the house. Look at that roof. The hot water heater, the HVAC isn't good. You're in a bad location. So when you call me 7 years from now and you're on a main road, you're going to ask me to sell this. It's going to be a tough sell.
I would say, too, I don't want to just sell, like, your house. I want your mom's business. I want your Aunt Susie's business, your brother's business. Like, I want all your friends. And if I do you wrong, you're not telling anyone about me. So
it's key. That's key.
Right.
And listen, I've seen that with all of you, you know, that you see, like, comes the brother and the sister, or the person that you did deal for last year, and now they're, you know, upgrading to a new house and everything. But like, to your point about, like, you know, we talk about this all the time, you know, the word like selling. Like, when you think of the word sales, you know, I feel like there's such a negative connotation to that word. Like, you know, I think people correlate it to convincing, or, you know, or just selling or being conniving or whatever. But I mean, to me, I mean, selling is really helping. You know what I mean? I mean, you were there to try to solve a problem. You were try to help them, meet their needs, whatever that may be. So yeah, I mean, trying to convince them to buy a house that is not a good fit. I mean, that's gonna come out in the wash real quick.
You've done that a couple of times too. I just 2 days ago came up with someone, and it was like, I forget who it was, but they basically were like, he's the only mortgage person I've ever dealt with that literally told me, no, I don't do this. Like, this is not a good idea. Like, turn down my business because financially it was a bad idea for them. And I think people are receptive of that. And that person has referred their parents to you.
Right.
So,
like... Yeah. No. I mean, it all comes out in the wash, I feel.
Yeah, I think a lot of what everyone's saying is something a mentor, when I first got started, told me, and I use this all the time, is like I used to go and have lunch with this, like, he was a really successful businessman, not in real estate, but when I was getting into it, I was kind of saying, like, what should I do for real estate? And like you said, I don't consider it on our license, this is real estate sales, but I don't feel like we're salespeople. And he said, any kind of sales job, he's like, as long as the person you're trying to work with, you're just trying to help, and he's like, just consider them as your parents or like a sibling or a best friend. And he's like, and just give them that advice. If it's your parents sitting across from you, if you're selling their house or taking them out to buy a house, what advice would you give your parents or a sibling or best friend?
That's really good advice.
And that's like, and that, I've always, and that was like right when I was getting started, and I've always went back to that. And sometimes like, it's hard because, they have different situations and stuff, but it's like, if you're looking at saying, how would I advise my parents? It kind of grounds you. It makes it, the advice honest. And I think people understand that and can, like.
Yeah. And listen, like what, like the one deal you lose because somebody's more salesy or tell somebody what they want to hear, I like I said, I think it comes out in the wash, and I think you're better for it. At least that's my kind of thought. But what do you think has made you most successful?
I think that approach, like kind of treat my clients like, when I think about advising them, like kind of like they're like my parents or a best friend, kind of how would I talk to them? I also try and like on the selling side, the listing side, I try and be creative. I kind of like the marketing part of it. So the different technologies and stuff out there, I try and stay really up to date and all that, and try and be creative and a little different, try and take different angles. And I mean, there's, like I said, there's a lot of agents, there's a lot of people doing similar things, so I try and change it up and try and help my clients stand out, and as myself as well.
Yeah, no, you got to stand out. I know you've done some pretty specific things in terms of targeting, different ways to target listing opportunities and stuff like that are pretty interesting. But Brad, how about you? What do you think has made you most successful?
I would just say my honesty. Just like I kind of said before, I just think I'm honest to a fault. And like you said, like you might lose one here and there, but I probably gain two on the back end. And I think just telling people the truth, not just telling people what they want to hear. Like you go on a listing appointment and some guy wants to hear his house worth $700,000, and I say it's only really worth $6,000.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna fight over it. It is what it is.
But the one part that I think agents don't get enough credit for is just the problem solving. I mean, that you're doing. I mean, to keep a deal together, the structuring, all that kind of stuff. I mean, Dan, we were, at a closing together recently, and like the morning of the closing, you're getting texts like, doing the walkthrough and like, what the heck?
Well, problem after problem after problem. But the biggest thing I think that was resonating when you were talking is I think we're all therapists.
Totally. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So you're taking a call, and then I'll get off the phone call, and my daughter will be like, who was that? It's like, it's a client. She's like, really?
Yeah.
We're giving life advice as we're going through our day, which I would have never thought. I would have been like, I'm going to be a psychologist.
Yeah, no, but you are on some level. Yeah, and like, nowadays, like, like this instance, it's the morning of, there's a doing a walkthrough, and the
pump on the pool wasn't working.
Like going, it sounds like it's a motocross race or whatever. But, but before we're at the closing table, it's like, he's already got a pool person out there. You know what I mean? Dealing with the problem, figuring out an escrow or whatever the case may be. I'm sure you guys deal with that kind of stuff. People leaving things behind at the house, or whether it's and all of you are. I mean, you're involved in coordinating. CFO inspections, home inspections, being there for the appraisal. Following up on the loan approval, vetting out a pre-approval. All those things. Buying one house, selling another. That closing gets delayed. I mean, there's just like so many things that I think people don't realize that. Sorry to make it,
making me sweat.
But I think people take it for granted. You know what I mean? And being able to put a for sale sign in front of the house and and get an offer, I mean, that's just like step one, right? That's just the easy part.
I heard the saying in the past where when you go to a nice restaurant, right, all you see is when the meal comes out and it looks really pretty and you plop it down in front of you. But if you could see the chaos in the kitchen,
That's
true.
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
Chaos.
So, all right, let's have some fun real quick. Like worst or craziest experience. You guys have any interesting ones? I'm
Oh,
sure you have a
gosh.
bunch, but
Totally.
anyone that
So-
stands out?
Go.
Oh my God.
Go.
I did a foreclosure, and the people that were currently living there were obviously getting, evicted.
Right.
So my client comes to buy the house. Everything's okay. We go to do the walkthrough, and literally there is feces like
Ooh.
all over the basement. I mean, they just picked up their beds and left everything else. They cooked pancakes and sausage in the morning, put everything in the sink. I mean, you can't even
That's
imagine.
nutty.
There's like pancake batter everywhere. I'm like, this is crazy.
And they're tenants, so they're not going to come back. to clean
No,
up.
but
Yeah.
you know what? A good lawyer, Bonnie Wright,
Yeah.
she got the agent to come back and help them clean up
That's awesome.
because
Yeah.
it was an agreement, and
Yeah.
they just
Yeah, but that's tough. I know we're not
Crazy.
seeing that as much now. Like foreclosure inventory is so low and everything. But you go back to the last real estate cycle. It's tough, right? Because that person they don't care. When you have a seller or somebody who's just like, all right, well then don't close. I mean, that's a hard thing to
no question.
overcome, right?
Yeah.
Trying to keep that together, and that's where you got to roll up your sleeves, I guess. But how about you, Dan?
I have a lot to pick from, but one that stands out the most is I had a client, we closed on a house. Next day he calls me, he goes, Dan, we got a problem. And I'm like, what's going on? He goes, we got 2 bodies here. I said, you're kidding. He was like, no. I went up in the attic over the garage and there was a box. And in the box there was 2 urns. It's grandma and grandpa. So problem solving. You call the agent and you make sure that the seller realizes that they left grandma and grandpa in a box over the garage, and please come get them because they're freaking out in the clouds. But yeah, everybody has a good story.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna go that way too. Other than the time I got rear-ended by a client showing houses,
Oh gosh.
who they left me there with my muffler on the ground, and they never bought a house with me. And then proceeded they called me, thought I was suing them. They were getting letters in them. I wasn't suing it. There was nothing to sue. That was a good one. But I had one, the very first deal that ever made me. I feel like it was my take. You have a deal that kind of feel like takes you off, the very first deal where you do an open house, you meet 4 people, and a neighbor sells a house, and it was okay, it's starting to come together. It was that deal for me. They were friends from high school, nicest people in the world, but the buyers of their house were very. It was a contentious deal. At the end. There was crazy things that went on, but my clients were the nicest in the world. They call me up, and this is after closing, and he says, "Hey, I need you to do me a favor. I can't go back over there, obviously." I said, "What do you need me to do?" He goes, "I left my dad in the house." I was like, your dad's ashes. So I went in the house. I knocked on the door. The woman said, I tell her where it is. Can I go get it? So now I'm carrying his ashes out of the house. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I strapped it in my front seat
Put the
with the seatbelt on it and drove it over to their new house.
The window closed.
Yeah,
make
and
sure
I had him
flying
come
out
out
the
and get it.
window.
I'm like, I was terrified. I was like, if I drop this, I don't know what I'll do. Yeah, it was bad. That was a bad one.
That's
Oh,
great.
that's funny.
I have a pretty funny one. This was a while ago, but a lot of times when you show homes, the listing agent or it'll describe, don't let out the cat or dog or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was showing a house and I did the lockbox, was open up, and the opposite happened. A cat ran into the house. And I was like, oh, that's
That
crazy.
never
Where does cat
happens.
come from? And the buyers were like, oh my God. So I'm like, all right, whatever. It's probably their cat. Or I called the agent and I'm like, a cat ran in the house when I opened the door. And she's like, they don't have a cat. And I was like, what? And then she's like, yeah, let me see. And she's like, she called the owners. She's like, oh, they're actually away for the day. And she's like, they don't have a cat. They don't have a cat that they take care of or anything.
Oh my God.
So I'm in this house with my buyers trying to catch this cat that's running away from us, running all under the couch and stuff. And I'm like, usually, you're trying to keep a cat or dog in the house.
Yeah,
We're trying to take this cat out.
Cat
So
out.
we eventually cornered it and were able to get this cat out of the house.
Get animal control to come in.
Yeah, I was like, what if we don't catch it? I'm like, it took us over a half an hour to catch it. And I asked, at first I was doing it, and I asked my buyers, I have to kind of walk through the house a little. I'm like, can you help me get this cat out?
And then we'll get the house.
Yeah. I'm like, you might have to buy it because we let a cat in.
How many? Just curious. This, I don't know. Maybe think of this, but like, how many? Have you guys ever had deals that you lost? Like, I mean, that just literally fell apart at like the very end, like when you're doing almost
We
doing a
all did.
walkthrough.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the walkthrough, yeah.
Maybe
Where
not.
they've just, I mean, where it's actually like I've seen obviously, like do a walkthrough and then there's like, all right, maybe somebody asked for a credit, but ultimately at that point everybody seems to come to the table. But if you
Well,
had deals die
I
that
had
far
one,
into a deal,
again, a while ago, but I had the buyer, and my buyer was a little, he was a little high strung, but he went the night before and did a slow drive-by of the house that he was going to buy, and I don't know why he was driving by the night before, but he noticed over the fence the seller was pulling their rose bushes out. So, and he doesn't say anything about it till the closing table. No, it's the walkthrough. And he said, they took out these rose bushes. And I was like, all right, we'll figure it out and everything. And we get to the closing table. And this was back in the day when you had a closing table and people were sitting in front of each other.
right?
And the seller denied it. The seller's like, I didn't take any rose bushes. And it didn't fall apart, but we sat, it was like an all day closing. Like a closing was 10 o'clock. We were there at 6 o'clock. We were closing. We were talking about calling rose places to get rose quotes, and this guy, he walked out. He was like so mad that we accused him of taking roses, and he finally admitted that, like, all right, I took a bush, even though it was like 10 bushes, but like, I mean, that was like, it didn't actually fall apart, but it was like, I'm like, this is gonna fall apart over rose bushes, and it was just because they were both so mad about it,
Right.
And he was like, you're accusing me, and my guy was
that
like,
becomes
I
like a
drove past
principle
your house, I
matter,
saw
right?
you taking it out, and
I would have showed up with a box from Home Depot with
Yeah.
a bunch of
I was
rose
just
bushes.
gonna say,
and
but
here we
that's
go.
what but
Yeah.
it wasn't even. It was just them arguing, and it was like we had to put them in separate rooms, and it was like kind of like it got like, and it was like me and the other agent were kept trying to work it out and trying to figure it out and stuff, and it wasn't like the cost of the roses or anything. It was just like
The point.
he was like, yeah, the
Principle
principle
of
of
it
it all, and luckily it did end up closing like 6 hours later, but that was close.
I'm sure the attorneys were happy about that.
Yeah.
They
Oh
loved
yeah,
it.
yeah. It was
good.
yeah. People took lunch. People came back later. It was a mess.
But like similar story where a deal actually died at that point or no?
Not that late most of the
Yeah.
time. I think you kind of see the signs as we're getting closer to closing. But my mindset's always like, look, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. In the meantime, I'm going to do everything in my power to make it work. And then at the end of the day, you can't get hung up on it, because I feel like if you get hung up on it and you kind of start kicking rocks, you feed off that and you continue that momentum. So I take it out of my mind and just proceed forward, and you figure it out. You always go forward, and you don't.
Yeah.
I think someone was saying this earlier. You don't get too high, and you don't get too low. You try to stay in the middle. And
Like Dan said, we're almost like psychologists, where towards the end, as closer you get, like a lot of people get more and more stressed,
They
and
do.
like we have to try and kind of set expectations, explain what's happening, why it's happening, talk them. A lot of people talk them down a little bit, so it doesn't get to a point where at the closing table someone walks off and doesn't close. So generally the agents can kind of keep it calm enough to, if it is a tough deal, to get to finally finish it off.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, listen. My first house that I bought, I think about this a lot. That when people buy a house, I mean, what would you say is the average amount of time that a buyer actually goes into the house before they buy it?
Very limited.
Yeah.
It's like
Limited.
probably like
Especially
2
these
times,
days.
like max,
Yeah,
right?
now,
You know what I mean?
Wait a
So-
7 minutes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Like,
a
in this
15-minute
market?
window, yeah,
Explain
yeah.
that again.
Well, no, I was just gonna say that, like, so I didn't finish my thought, but the house, my first house that I bought, I was thinking about the fact that before I closed, I was probably in it like once when I originally saw it,
Yeah.
and then
Home
maybe
inspection.
I didn't even know. I guess I was there for the home inspection, and then you do the final walkthrough, and then I remember doing the final walkthrough, and all the furniture's gone, and now you kind of start to see like all the things that are like not perfect with the
Right.
house. 'Cause the
Yeah,
furniture
yeah,
covers
yeah.
a lot of stuff up, and you get that a little bit of you're nervous, you're stressed. I mean, for me, it was like the first house that I'm buying, and you get that like that buyer's remorse. But it just got me thinking that it's pretty crazy that you're making probably the biggest financial decision of your life,
Oh, yeah.
Quickly.
having only gone in the house one or
Yeah.
2 times. And in the current market, and again, I know it's maybe starting to slow down a little bit, but this having to make a cash offer, waiving appraisals, waiving inspections, I wonder how much. I think we're going to see a little, buyer's remorse. You know what I mean? Maybe
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you just,
No
if you
question.
paid top dollar and you just had to feel like you made that decision so fast. I mean, it's been interesting.
And
to say
I
the
think
least.
we're seeing it because, to me, I see more and more of the seller take a deal, that buyer do it a day or two later back out, because a lot of buyers are pushing themselves so far to the limit of what they could afford or what they wanted to spend or whatever it is, and they get so worked up and excited, and they'll do whatever they can to get the
get an
house,
offer accepted,
and a day or
yeah.
two later be like, what did I just do?
Yeah.
Right.
And then a lot of agents are calling the second and third offer, being like, the first one fell apart. And then your buyer's like, what happened to that first buyer? Why'd they fall? Why'd they
And
leave?
then
And
it
stuff.
just
And
then
they kind of
unravels
like,
a little bit,
rattle.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think I've seen that a couple of times where it goes to the second and third buyer, because I think buyers are kind of getting too emotionally over excited, and then a day or two later they're like, wait a sec, what, I didn't want to spend that much, or I didn't want to go over this budget or whatever.
Well, you
And
probably, it's like sometimes it's like you're the highest bidder, and then you're like, all right, wait a minute, did I miss something that somebody
Yeah,
else
yeah,
did?
did I
miss
yeah,
or whatever?
way
You
too
get
much, yeah.
some of that too. But that's interesting. All right, so advice to a new agent. I mean, you've all been at it for a while. I mean, somebody getting into this space, like, Dan, you mentioned, starting out, like, we were working together pretty early on, and
Absolutely.
it was like, just like, got to find business, and you don't have that book to fall back on, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, but what advice would you give?
I started off with the financial industry. I'm sorry, I tapped the table. And I had my financial advisory business backing me up. So if I had failed, I have that to lean on. I can pay my mortgage. I can pay my bills that way. But again, don't do it because you're looking for a paycheck, because that'll
Yeah.
only last so long and people see right through you. Do it for a passion, because you genuinely like showing homes, being involved in the process, and people will see it. If they call that commission breath, don't they? You come in and you're like, I'm going to get paid, buy this house. They're going to see right through you. Do it, like I said before, as a passion, because you're genuinely interested in it and you want to learn.
Yeah.
I think that's my best advice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sound advice.
My advice is definitely link up with bigger agents in your office
There you
and be
go.
their runner. Do every open
Yeah, it's
house
gotta learn,
and go to the inspections and take out their buyers. And yes, you will be working for free, but in the end, the experience that you get from that,
Invaluable.
far exceeds that.
That's really good advice for sure.
I think kind of the same thing you said is, I think agents coming into the business should expect, you have to kind of have something. I know everyone needs to pay bills and stuff, but I think you should expect your first year or two to almost be like an internship. I look back on my first year or two, I linked up with, like you said, a broker, and I didn't even make minimum wage, not even close to minimum wage for the first year or two, but I looked at it like I was working on so many different transaction deals that I soaked up so much from that broker, making peanuts, but I learned so much in my first year or two. I think a lot of agents get so excited to come in and make a nice big commission check, or like they see what other agents are making. They're like, I want to do that. And they try and think their first year or two is going to be like that. I think you have to really take your first year or two, just like a lot of like finance and stuff. When I was in finance, out of college, I got an internship right after college because I knew I had to learn a business. I went to school for finance, but you have to learn the business, the ins and outs of it. And I think real estate's even probably more important, that you have to learn the real life part of real estate, not just the stuff you learn in the real estate school. So I think taking your first year or two and trying to make it like an internship, or in your mind trying to make an internship, and just learn as much as you can, and then expect to try and take off after that, not take off your first year.
Yeah, that's the toughest thing. Even in the mortgage space, it's like there's no formal training, right? You're kind of just getting thrown into it. But yeah, linking up, like you said, because even like the open houses, right? If you're a top agent, you know what I mean? You might be at a point where you don't want to work the weekends.
Or
And
they
if you're
don't need
willing
buyers,
to,
so
they don't need
I'll
buyers,
go.
so you're willing to go and do it, and you got to cut your teeth. But how about you?
I think well, what Dave said was perfect. I think it's not easy. Like, I think everyone thinks like, well, he does it, I could do it, and like you think you're going to be rolling in, $10,000 commission check after $10,000 commission check. It's just not how it works right away. And I think the thing that new agents need to do more so than anything, use your sphere. Like, write a letter to all your friends and family, letting them know. Social media, like, you need to let people be known. I remember missing out on like 4 or 5 deals when I first started because they're like, oh, I didn't know that you were selling houses. I would have used you. And it was like,
Isn't that like
wow.
the worst thing?
Yeah,
it
I just
happens to me
cost
too. It's
myself
like, oh, I just
$15,000.
refinanced,
Like,
and you're just like, oh, what, like,
Right.
you're 100% right.
so like, I think your sphere, until you start to meet people that you don't know outside your sphere, like, you have to lean on friends, families, cousins, and stuff like that in the beginning.
Social media.
That's the biggest
No
thing.
question.
More than anything, like, it's kind of crazy to say to let it be known that you're a realtor and telling people what you're closing and what you're doing and what houses people are buying, but like, people want to work with people that are successful. They don't want to put their biggest financial transaction in their life in the hands of someone who
Yeah.
no offense, doesn't really know what they're doing.
Correct.
You know,
I think
so
it's a tough thing for a lot of agents to do.
Yeah.
It almost feels like you're bragging, but
Mhm.
you're like really just trying to tell people, like, look, this is what I'm doing. This
Right.
is,
Yeah,
So
but then
it's
I
kinda-
see all
it's a tough
you all
balance.
do it the right way. But like, let me ask, like, is the social media? Do you feel like you actually get a lot of phone calls from that, or is it
No
more just your
question.
general branding of like who you are? But you think that because you said social media and everyone was like, oh yeah, I mean, I know social media is a big thing, but to actually
You
have
get
it
phone
drive
calls?
business.
Because I get messages.
But from people that I know,
Yeah.
I'll get messages like,
Yeah.
"Hey, my friend is looking to buy a house. Can you help them?"
yes,
Of course.
all the time.
I
all
never
the
get a
time.
phone call. I got leads saying, like, just it pops up on
Mhm.
my phone. I'm like, oh, somebody recommended me to you. And I'm like, well, why didn't you just call me? Like, my
Yeah.
phone number's all over the place,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
But I get DMs and
Yeah.
you get phone calls and DMs. I'm sure
DMs
combo.
more, I guess.
I think a lot of it for me is branding. Like I try and like kind of saying posting about what you're doing and stuff is kind of just doing social media stuff to brand yourself and just making sure people remember you.
Well, it's
you know,
top of
remember
mind, right? I mean,
Yeah.
is the big thing, I guess, that you're trying to do. How much do you all? You know, we've been talking about this more recently, you know, about your past database. You know, like I'm coming off of, you know, what was historically low interest rates. So a lot of times you think, all right, well, a lot of these clients, they have low rates, so there's not a need to really have a conversation. But I've been setting up these annual reviews, right, where I've been trying to like go like at the 1 year mark, you know, try to do a phone call and just kind of, I mean, do you guys target your past database a lot? I mean, are you actively?
Via text messages for me.
Yeah.
You know, I have an app on my phone that I can put all my clients' phone numbers on there, and I'll send out a message. How are you? How have you been? Is there anything I can help you out with?
Yeah.
And a lot of times I get responses based off of that blast.
Okay.
They come back and hey, by the way, I need somebody to get pre-qualified.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or
you're
you know,
just-
my cousin's looking to buy or sell. So staying in touch and
Oh, yeah.
texting more than phone calls, right? Because who has the time to sit there on a phone
No
call
one
for an
does.
hour?
Yeah,
You know?
Yeah, and I think like Dan said, it's got that when you're talking about your sphere, it's got to be more personal. It can't be like, hey, I sold a house. It's more like, yeah, how you doing in your house after 2 years? Are you enjoying it? And you know, more of a personal touch because you know them, and I think they appreciate it compared to just pushing your name out in front of them.
But yeah, I mean, you two guys talk about the sphere, and we talk about the same thing, and it's interesting though because I think people just you go to these like mastermind seminars, and you go to all these things, and I think people are looking for this magic bullet, right? Like there's just like this magic trick, but
There isn't.
It's what
it's
works
a,
for
it's-
you.
But it's a lot of little things, isn't it? Is it a lot of little things that
Yeah.
over time add up to really make a
Oh, yeah.
difference? Yeah,
I drive my clients champagne on New Year's Eve.
yeah.
Anyone
Wow,
who's
that's
bought or
cool.
sold a house with me, we load up the kids in the car. We
That's
go to
cool.
lunch and we
Yeah.
roll out 40 bottles of champagne.
That's
And
awesome.
if they're not there, we put it on the doorstep.
Yeah.
Happy New Year. Thank you for your
Oh, that's
business.
amazing.
And you know what happens the following day? Hey, I was just going to tell you, my
Yeah,
cousin
so-and-so.
needs a house. And it's like,
That's
were you
good.
just going to tell me or did that
Yeah,
champagne
yeah,
buy it?
yeah.
And listen, you know,
they got
and
a
I-
little tipsy and started
Right.
saying,
But I'll tell you, like,
Exactly.
I don't think it's deliberate. I mean, I've had borrowers literally to my face say, "Yeah, well, I just refinanced," and I'm like, "Wait, what?" And they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well, with the current lender, whoever servicing the loan," I'm just like, but they're not in this business. They don't.
Right.
I mean, when you explain it to them, they know that that's how you make your livelihood, but they're not thinking about it that way. You know what I mean? Most people are going to a 9-to-5 job, and they go to their job and they come home. And for us, it's such a big deal. Like you said, like when somebody's like just tells you that they just sold your house, you're just like,
That's
oh
the
my
best
goodness.
with new construction. When you're dealing with a client, they're like, they think they're helping you out. And they'll be like, oh, I went to the new construction to the model. And
Oh,
like,
you
maybe
get
it's
so
Wait,
Did you
what?
sign anything?
Yeah. What are you talking about? And,
Yeah.
and they're like, what do you mean? They think like, oh, I'm helping you out. You don't even have to come. And I'm
Right.
like, what? No, I have to be there. And
Wow.
that creates a little bit of a problem.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for coming in. I just want to wrap up real quickly. As we kind of mentioned a couple times here, the current market changing. I mean, like you turn on the news. I mean, there's so many things that are tied to housing right now. I mean, you hear people talk about. I mean, obviously, inflation is spiraling, interest rates higher, recession. What impact is that going to have to do with housing? You just hear everybody talking. Media, in my opinion, will blow it out of proportion in terms of how much the real estate is cooling. But just, and again, I know there's national statistics, but just be curious to hear your guys' perspective on the local level and the market you're in. Just what have you seen? What's your opinion on where you think things are going? I know we all don't have a crystal ball, but just curious what everybody's thoughts are.
I think it's very town dependent now. Like I think like your towns that are really desirable, they tend to be like super busy right now still. less than, not 9 offers anymore. Now you're down to 3.
Correct.
But you're still really, really busy. And I think that there are other areas that might not be as popular have cooled, where you were dealing with 3 and 4 offers have now turned into 1. So I think it's very town dependent in certain aspects.
I agree.
Yeah, I think the market went up so fast, so quick that everyone knew it couldn't keep going, and it seems to be leveling off, and that's where you see like certain towns still moving, other towns kind of getting a little soft. And I'm telling my clients, I can't, like, when they're saying, should I wait 6 months or a year, will I get more money? I'm like, no one knows, but it's really, it's doubtful, because now the Fed is, said they're trying to fight inflation, which, the housing market, the rental prices are a big part of inflation. So, when you have the Federal Reserve trying to soak that all up, the housing market's not going to fight that for a certain amount of time. And so I think either the Fed's going to do their job, which usually they do, and the housing market's going to, I don't think it's going to go down, but it might soften. And if that happens, then the 10-year bond will kind of come down, and then it'll help rates, and that'll kind of even things out again. So I don't think there's any kind of big movement either way. But I can't see, with the Fed kind of saying what they're going to do and telling everybody, I can't imagine it's going to kind of keep rocketing up. But there are, the other side of it is there are so many buyers. Even like when rates went over 6%, it was a pause, but then when it came back down, like when it came out 0.5%, it was everyone right back into it, and it turned into, again, just submitted an offer where they had 10 buyers on a house, and I'm like, look at this house. Like 2 weeks ago, it was just kind of slow, and now you have 10 buyers. So I think there's so many buyers waiting for it to trickle down a little bit, which it did. They're all jumping back in. So I think any price decline will be met with all these buyers again, and if prices go up, the Fed's just going to get more aggressive, and that's going to bring it down. So I think for a while, it's just going to be even keel, is what I kind of feel.
I agree, 100%. I think right now it's just simply serious buyers, and then once any change, everyone's going to be back at it. No question.
I still see New Yorkers. Recently, I had a New Yorker with a 2-family in Staten Island that was worth about $900,000. And they came to visit their family here in New Jersey, Monmouth County, and they said, well, how much did you pay for your house? $600,000? I could live like this with this garden. So I think we're still going to see that. We're still going to see the influx of New Yorkers coming into our state and seeing what they can get for their money. So I think that'll drive our market. That'll be the trickle that keeps coming in. And, I tell people, like, look, ask your mother, ask your father what their first interest rate was. And, if it was during the Ronald Reagan years, you're looking at, some ridiculous high number. And I tell them, like, hey, look, I get it. If this is what you want to do, let's go into it, deal with the interest rates as to where they are right now. And if the market does pull back and does get cheaper with regards to rates, let's get back in. Let's refinance at that point.
Because you're not married to it.
You're not married to it, exactly.
You could refi, and if the rates go up, well, you made the right decision to buy then, because then
Exactly.
you're buying in a
So
year.
you're
So
locking in.
it's win-win. You can't.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, because people want to relate it to, 2008, 2009, but that recession was the result of a housing crisis, and the inventory, we talk about these stats a lot, a couple months ago, in 0809, there was roughly 2.5 million homes on the market at any one time. A few months ago, I think it was call it like May, June, there was only 850,000 homes on the market.
Big difference.
That's gone up a lot. I think it's at like 1.2 or 1.3 million homes nationally. So that's a big increase. But if you look at things seasonally, there's always more inventory this time of year. And just for the record, we're in the beginning of August, but July, August, because that's when people are putting their homes on the market to get situated before school starts system. Or whatever that is. So I think that inventory thing, to your point, it's like, because I'm seeing people that have probably given up because they just, if you're a first time home buyer doing lower down payment, you're just getting sick of just like putting a bid in and finding out there was 10 bids higher than you. But I think as more stuff comes on the market, I think there'll be buyer demand. So is it safe to say nobody's seeing like a major housing correction, right? Would you guys kind of agree with that?
No, I think big picture. They've been talking about how like they have the whole numbers of family formation, how many families form every year, and the builders have been behind like building that amount of houses every year for like I think the last 10 years or something like that. So they're so far behind, and now like the smaller builders, like I know some builders I've worked with that are saying I don't want to build anything because of inflation.
Construction costs
are skyrocketing. So they're not building, and the big builders aren't keeping up. So that's where like there's 5 buyers for every house, and that's where like if the prices do get soft, I think everyone's going to jump on it. So I don't think, like you said back in 2008 when there's a big correction, I can't foresee that happening unless something really wild happens.
Well, we're also in a really mature market, right? Like there's not a lot of land in Ocean Monmouth County, or really anywhere in New Jersey that all of a sudden somebody just be able to build all these homes. But what are you seeing in terms of, you mentioned people coming from New York to New Jersey, and totally agree with that. I mean, there's certain towns in New Jersey that have become like a mini Staten Island. I mean, it's pretty unbelievable. Yeah. But what about people leaving the state? How much of that are you seeing people, it's like kind of, we used to call it in 2008, like drive till you qualify, right? When the housing was so crazy, people would move further away from New York. I mean, I know I'm seeing a lot of people move to the Carolinas, Florida, that kind of thing. Are you seeing a lot of it?
Yeah, I probably sold 4 or 5 last year where people went to Florida, and like not for any other reason other than just no state income tax, cheaper taxes here. Like if you're retiring and you don't have family ties here, like, and you don't love New Jersey,
what's the difference?
Financially, I mean, if you could save $20,000 a year in state taxes,
you're going to do it.
Yeah, you'd be crazy not to. You don't have to shovel snow.
Yeah, that's true. That is a big thing. I never paid attention to that too much. I remember hearing on like sports radio talking about, sports, getting a big contract and living in a certain state where you don't pay state income tax. And then when you look at, I mean, it's huge. It's a huge number. It's a huge number for sure. Yeah. So interesting. All right, well, guys, thank you so much, Meghan, Dan, Brad, Dave. Thank you guys so much. Hopefully, everybody out there found this interesting. We're gonna make sure that we share everybody's contact information here. That way, if anybody has any questions and wants some more information on anything real estate related, please don't hesitate to reach out. And Ryan, Jack, and the group at the Good Company Podcast, thanks so much for allowing us to take over for today. And see everybody soon.